Earlier, I told Steph SABRAW that one of my favorite topics is like genders and relationships and stuff like that, just like romance in general and all that. Courtship. She's like, okay. And so we've got a video here. Jordan Peterson, guys who are too nice. Welcome, folks. I'm Jaby Koay, joined by Steph SABRAW. And we're looking at a video from Essential Truth. I'm sure that this was a video that was just re-uploaded. It's of Jordan Peterson. I am a person who likes to listen to Jordan Peterson from time to time. I think that he's very eloquent, very interesting, has a lot of cool thoughts I think are worthwhile. At the very least, worth considering. What about you? Have you listened?
I'm not familiar with Jordan Peterson.
Just to let you guys know, I might play this in fast mode just because it's a 12-minute video. Here we go.
If you ask a disagreeable person what he wants, say, or she wants, they'll tell you right away. They know. It's like, this is what I want, and this is how I'm going to get it. But agreeable people, especially if they're really agreeable, are so agreeable that they often don't even know what they want, because they're so accustomed to living for other people and to finding out what other people want and to trying to make them comfortable and so forth, that it's harder for them to find a sense of their own desires as they move through life.
There's a lot of truth in the first 25 seconds of this video.
Facts.
That's extremely true.
I was like, oh my gosh, are you reading my diary?
Yeah. And that's not, look, there's situations where that's advantageous, but it's certainly not advantageous if you're going to try to forge yourself a career. That just doesn't work at all. And so even though on average men and women aren't that much different in terms of their levels of agreeableness by the group, if you go out and you look at the extremes, they're very different. So all of the most agreeable people are women, and all of the most disagreeable people are men.
I was just thinking, oh no, where happened? Why did it go away? Son of a bitch. Stupid YouTube's been doing this lately where it just puts me off to another video. I was just thinking, oftentimes the people I meet who are very agreeable, and I was like, don't be sexist, Jaby, but oftentimes the people I meet who are agreeable are women and disagreeable are men.
Yeah, I don't think that's sexist. I think that's a survival instinct that we've had to adapt.
Yeah.
Different in terms of their levels of agreeableness by the group. If you go out and you look at the extremes, they're very different. So all of the most agreeable people are women, and all of the most disagreeable people are men. And the thing is, the extremes are often what matter rather than what's in the middle. And so one of the ways that's reflected in society, by the way, is there's way more men in prison. And the best personality predictor of being imprisoned is to be low in agreeableness.
Wow.
It makes you callous. Now you might think, well, what's the opposite of compassion and politeness? And the answer to that is, I think it's best sort of conceptualized as a trading game. So let's say that we're going to play repeated trading games. And if you're very agreeable, then you're going to bargain harder on my behalf than you're going to bargain on your own behalf.
That's true.
Whereas if you're very disagreeable, you're going to do the reverse. You're going to think, I'm in this trading game for me, and you're going to take care of your own interests. Where an agreeable person is going to say, no, at best, at worst, this has to be 50-50, but I'd like to help you every way I can. One of the things
When Achara went with me to India, I'm going in thinking, everybody who approaches me trying to sell me something, if I want something from them, I have to negotiate. I have to. And I have to bargain with them. You know, anytime I encountered something that I wanted, I'm like, all right, I'm going to talk this down as much as possible. I'm going to talk this person down and be willing to walk, whether you're buying a car or whether you're buying something on the street. You got to be willing to walk. That's important. Achara saw something that she wanted and the person quoted her a price and she's like, okay. And she just bought it. I'm like, Achara, like, what are you doing? She's like, no, I wanted it and I want to help out their business. I'm like, no, but you're supposed to negotiate. You're supposed to talk them down. That's part of the game of buying something on the street. You're supposed to talk them down. Now they think you're a sucker. And sure enough, she bought something while we were in Goa, and then all these people started coming up to her, get her to buy something. I'm like, see, you're a sucker. Everyone wants to buy something from you. I get you to buy something from them now because they know that you're just going to buy it at full value. And she had to keep saying no, no, no.
Yeah, I feel like I resonate with that because Achara is a nice person and she would never, like I do, I have to tell myself I can't do this all the time, would never think someone would try to hustle me more because I wouldn't do that to them.
Yeah,
and then you realize that's naive.
Yes.
They are going to.
Yes.
have to be careful of if you're agreeable is not to be exploited, because you'll line up to be exploited. And I think the reason for that is because you're wired to be exploited by infants. And so that just doesn't work so well in that actual world. And one of the things that happens very often in psychotherapy, you know, people come to psychotherapy for multiple reasons, but one of them is they often come because they're too agreeable. And so what they get is so-called assertiveness training, although it's not exactly assertiveness that's being trained. What it is the ability to learn how to negotiate on your own behalf. And one of the things I tell agreeable people, especially if they're conscientious, is say what you think. Tell the truth about what you think. There's going to be things you think that you think are nasty and harsh. And they probably are nasty and harsh, but they're also probably true. And you need to bring those up to the forefront and deliver the message. And it's not straightforward at all, because agreeable people do not like conflict.
Nope.
Exactly.
Not at all. They smooth the water. You know, and you can see why that is in accordance with the hypothesis that I've been putting forward. You don't want conflict around infants. It's too damn dangerous. You don't want fights to break out. You don't want anything to disturb the relative
Okay,
peace.
so he's connecting this to the biology that is the female biology and motherhood and all that stuff. That's what he's connecting it to.
Yeah.
That took me a second because he mentioned babies. I'm like, what do babies have to do with anything right now?
Is he also talking about just how what we're taught from birth on?
It's possible.
Will try to.
Yeah, that's possible. It's like you're supposed to be a good girl.
Yeah.
Boys will be boys. Like that sort of separation of indoctrination that you pass on for,
Yeah,
like,
and if you're lucky enough, parents don't fight in front of you.
Yeah.
And if you're also more prone to being hurt physically and perhaps emotionally, you also may be loath to engage in the kind of high intensity conflict that will solve problems in the short term, because it takes a lot of conflict to solve problems in the short term. And if that can spiral up to where it's dangerous, which it can if it gets uncontrolled, it might be safer in the short term to keep the waters smooth and to not delve into those situations where conflict emerges. The problem with that is it's not a very good medium to long-term strategy, right? Because lots of times there are things you have to talk about because they're not going to go away. Mm-hmm. And the advantage to having a well-socialized, disagreeable person is that they really don't let much get in their way. So if you can get a kid who's disagreeable socialized, that person can be quite the creature, because they're very forward-moving in their nature and very difficult to stop. But if you don't get them successfully domesticated, tamed, roughly speaking, by the time they're 4, their peers reject them. And that's a big problem, because your job as a parent is to make your child socially desirable by the age of 4. Like wow. You want to burn that into your brain, because people don't know that. That's your job. And here's why. It's easy if you think about it carefully. So you imagine you've got a 3-year-old child, so sort of halfway through that initial period of socialization, and you take that child out in public. Okay, what do you want for the child? Who cares about you? What do you want for the child? You want the child to be able to interact with other children and adults so that the children are welcoming and smile and want to play with him or her, and so the adults are happy to see the child and treat him or her properly. And if your child's a horrible little monster because you're afraid of disciplining them or you don't know how to do that properly, then what they're going to do is they're going to experience nothing but rejection from other children and false smiles from other parents and adults.
This hurts. It's too real, man. I don't think my parents domesticated me very well because I didn't get along with kids. I was very disagreeable, very rambunctious. You can see that. And but I didn't get along with other kids that well. I found myself often isolated because I was just too much for people to handle or something like that. And so he's saying all this stuff about how by the age of 4, etc. It's like all this stuff is out of your control as a kid.
Yeah.
What's crazy to me though is the balance that has to be struck here, because you have a disagreeable child, which is he's saying is actually an interesting place to start because that's the person that's going to go out and get shit done, right?
Yeah.
But you have to domesticate them, which puts them closer to agreeable. That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just that middle ground that you're sort of looking for.
I feel the opposite triggered. My parents wanted me to be likable. I was super emotional growing up, but they taught me, they were like, that's embarrassing. Reputation is everything. It's like an Asian parent thing. I'm sure you are familiar with that. I feel like I went the opposite spectrum of agreeable, and you're the opposite of disagreeable.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm very hard-headed, yeah.
And so then you're throwing the child out there into a world where every single face that they see is either hostile or lying. And that's not something that's going to be particularly conducive to the mental health or the well-being of your child. If your child can learn a couple simple rules of behavior, like don't interrupt adults when they're talking too much and pay attention and try not to hit the other kids over the head with a truck any more than is absolutely necessary, and share and play properly, then when they meet other kids, the kids are going to try out a few little play routines on them, and that's going to go well, and then they're going to go off and socialize each other for the rest of their lives. Because that's what happens, is that from 4 years old onwards, the primary socialization with children takes place among other children. And so if the kids don't get in on that early, they don't move into that developmental spiral upwards and they're left behind. And you can imagine how terrible that is, because a 4-year-old will not play with another 4-year-old who's 2. But a 5-year-old certainly will not play with a 5-year-old who's 2, right? Because the gap is just starting to get unbelievably large. And so the kids start out behind, and then the peers leave them behind, and then those kids are alienated and outside the peer group for the rest of their life. Well, those are the ones that grow up to be long-term antisocial, right? They're already aggressive. It doesn't dip down. Now, what happens to normal boys, roughly speaking? Imagine the aggressive 2-year-old types. They get socialized, so their level of aggression goes down, and then they hit puberty and testosterone kicks in, and bang, levels of aggression go back up. And so that's why males are criminals between the ages roughly of 16 and about 25. So, and it matches the creativity curve, by the way. It's so cool. If you look at the spike of creativity among men, 16 to 25, and it starts to go down, criminality matches that absolutely perfectly.
Wow.
So that's quite cool.
Wow, so, that is mind-blowing. It's one of those things that reminds you, there's an Indian movie coming out called Jund, and I think it's going to delve into that a little bit in a pop culture kind of way. Everyone has the same sort of potential energy, the potential to give to the world, and it can either be done in such a way that causes more chaos and negativity in the world, or it could be positive and inspiring. And it's the same energy pool. That's what's crazy to me, what he's talking about here.
Yeah, there's two sides to every emotion. It's nuts.
Yeah. So the testosterone levels raise the average level of aggression among men. It's more dominance than aggression, actually, and testosterone is by no means all bad. And then it starts to decrease at about age 25 or 26, which is usually when men stop staying up late at night, stop drinking as much, develop a full-time career, and take on the burdens and responsibilities and opportunities that are associated with a long-term partner and family. And so,
I mean, 30 is the new 20. I said 30 is the new 40. 30 is the new 20.
Yeah, definitely.
What he's talking about is way more traditional.
But yes. 25, your frontal lobe kicks in, so that makes sense scientifically.
You've been getting into fights. What's going on?
I know. I'm trying not to show it, Jaby.
And bruised knuckles was happening.
I thought you were talking about my broken nail that I've been like trying to hide. No, I fell down the stairs.
You fell down the stairs?
I know. My sister's like, when you say that, you sound like a DV victim, and I was like, okay, I'm
in a relationship with my thing.
Yeah. No, I'm athletic, but I am clumsy.
Okay.
And I am moving at 100 miles per hour sometimes. Sometimes I'm like a snail. And I was just running down the stairs with heels on, not even thinking. I don't even know why I was. Yeah. And I just missed a step. I know. Why are you?
What are the odds of that happening? God.
And then I looked up and there was a man at the top and he didn't push me. I don't know what happened. No, I full on just ran. Everyone who hangs out with me a lot knows.
Was there really a guy at the top of the stairs?
No, I'm kidding.
That would have been amazing. You looked up, but why did you do that?
It was Batman, and all he said was, "I am vengeance." Like shit.
Well, so that's the development of what I would call predatory aggression, because I also think that the agreeableness distribution is probably something like predatory aggression versus maternal sympathy. It's something like that. So if you look at other mammals that are predators, because we're predators as well as prey animals. If you look at other animals like bears, the male bear has absolutely nothing to do with the raising of the infants. In fact, the female bears will keep the male the hell away because he's likely to kill the infants and maybe even to eat them. So there's no maternality at all in solitary male mammalian predators. It's really useful to investigate the viewpoints of people who have opposing views to yours. Because they'll tell you things, not only will they tell you things you don't know, they'll also tell you how to see the world in ways that you don't see it. And they'll also have skills that you don't have, that you could develop. So for example, if you're an introverted person, it's very useful to watch an extroverted person, because the extroverted person has ways of being in the social world that aren't natural to you, that you can use to improve your toolkit. And if you're disagreeable, one of the best things to do with disagreeable people, especially if that's alienating them from other people, for example, because it can, people treat you like you're a selfish, arrogant son of a, maybe that's because you are. It's like, okay, so what do you do about that? One of the most promising treatments, let's say, for that is get the person to do something for someone else once a day, just as a practice, and learn how to do it. Maybe you can wake the circuit up, if you think that it's lying dormant in you, which is probably right. I think we have a very wide range of propensities within us. Some are switched on, genetic propensities. Some are switched on, but I think that if you put yourself in the right situation or walk yourself through the right exercises, you can switch some of these other things on as well.
Let's take something more innocuous like DC and Marvel. The vitriol between these two factions, these fanboys, is so strange to me. I'm like, both of you guys like the same thing when you think about it. And there's so much vitriol because of this ownership sense of like, this is my team. But it's like, maybe you can enjoy something from that and they can enjoy something from yours. Like, what's wrong with that? I'm someone who's in the middle. I like both.
Me too.
Extrapolate from that politics, the global theater, whatever you want to call it, where, there's vitriol between two countries and stuff like that. Or keeping it domestic, Republicans and Democrats. And right now we live in this era of the echo chamber. It's strange because this device, which was supposed to bring us closer together, has actually driven us further apart. It's created these echo chambers where we're only hearing our side. And that's actually quite scary. And so I always tell people, try listening, especially in my family, because I have family that is very hardcore right, very Republican, Fox News all day long. I'm like, okay, let me try to talk to them. Let me try to engage, because I could just flippantly go, that's them, I'm me. We don't talk about politics. I engage, and I'm like, you need to listen to both sides. I tell them straight up, you got to listen to both sides. You know?
Yeah, 100%. As much as I don't want to, you don't want to. It feels good to be affirmed by beliefs that you agree with.
Yeah.
But you are just limiting your potential in that idea. One thing that I love about my parents is we just watched the Biden State of the Union. And then after we checked every major news outlet to see what their reporting was.
Oh, wow.
And that's the way you get the best well-rounded. And then you also realize, oh, all of them have massive hints of bullshit, you know?
Yes.
It's just still a news site. It's entertainment. They want to get your viewership.
Yes. That's very true.
It brings you down to earth.
I have friends, I mean, obviously living in LA, most of my friends are left-leaning. And I consider myself, I guess, in the middle, you know, I'm more in the middle, but I favor left. And I listen to them and I go, wow, you're like really hard left. The way they talk, it's like there's nothing good from the right whatsoever. Nothing. Even the stuff I watch daily, which is Philip DeFranco, it's like he's clearly way more left-leaning, and I'm like, I can't change people, but I try my best. I try to employ a sense of listening to both sides.
Neutrality.
Because sorry?
Neutrality,
yeah, because I feel like you'll get the most interesting data that way.
But it takes work and dedication and discipline. I would say, generally speaking, if you want to adapt yourself properly to life, you should find a niche in the environment that corresponds with your temperament. Right? You shouldn't work at cross purposes to your temperament because it's just too damn difficult. But having done that, then you should work on developing the skills and viewpoints that exist in the space opposite to your personality, because that's where you're fundamentally underdeveloped. And that way I think you can extend out your temperamental capability across a wider range. And to me, that's roughly equivalent as bringing a richer toolkit to each situation. You know, so if you're hyper extroverted, you should probably learn to shut up at parties now and then and listen just to see what's going on, to see if you can manage it, you know. And if you're introverted, well, then you should learn how to speak in public and to learn how to go to parties without hiding in the corner and saying nothing to anyone. You know, and if you're agreeable, then you need to learn how to be disagreeable so people can't push you around. And if you're disagreeable, you need to learn how to be agreeable so that you're not an evil son of a bitch. So, and the same thing applies even in the conscientious domain. It's like if you're too conscientious, you need to learn to relax and let go a little bit. And if you're unconscientious, it's time, like, get out the Google Calendar, man, and start scheduling your day, right? And beat yourself on the back of the head with a stick until you're disciplined enough so that you can actually stick to something for some length of time and not living in absolute squalor, which is something that would characterize someone who's very disorderly, for example, because they don't notice. It doesn't bother them.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe they can see it, but it doesn't have any emotional valence, and so it doesn't have any motivational significance.
Yeah.
You know, so the other thing you might want to think about too, if you're choosing a partner, is try not to choose someone who's too distant from you on the temperamental variables, because you're going to have a hard time bridging the gap. You know, it's hard for an introverted person and an extroverted person to coexist. And it's really hard for an orderly person and a disorderly person to coexist, because they will drive each other nuts.
Yes.
Why don't you pick up?
Yes.
Why are you so obsessed by it? That's the basic argument, you know. So it's useful to know about your temperament so that you can negotiate the space with your partner as well. And I don't think you should try to find someone who's exactly the same as you, because then you don't have the benefits of the alternative viewpoint.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you got to watch it, because you may hit irreconcilable differences of various sorts. And I've seen that most particularly among couples who are high and low in openness. That's a rough one. And also high and low in conscientiousness. That's another rough one, because they just cannot see how the other person sees the world at all.
High and low in openness and high and low in conscientiousness. What
I think he means?
What does he mean by that?
Openness, I think, means the ability to be completely open with them in terms of your emotions, your feelings, your dreams, your desires. And then what was
consciousness.
Consciousness. I think that means what you care about.
Okay.
So if it's your worldview or how you keep your house.
Okay.
How you're consciously thinking about the way you're going about life and how things affect you. He's amazing.
Oh, this is your first time hearing him?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. He's very interesting. He said you should try not to find someone who is too far from your temperament. And I have done that more than I care to admit. And man, it drives me nuts.
Yes.
And it's like, I have been the person dating the introvert. And it's not like she was a total introvert, but she definitely wasn't social like me. And so it was always awkward going to parties. I'm a social butterfly. I need you to get off of my hip and let me go and do this, and I'll come back to you. And she would get so upset. Like, she couldn't stay on my arm the whole time. And I'm like, it would drive me nuts.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I feel that.
And like, I've had partners who are like super messy and disorganized. I'm like, do you not know me? Like, I bought so much IKEA furniture to help girlfriends keep organized, and they just put the mess into more boxes. It just spreads out the mess. I'm like, it's not getting better.
Yeah, no. Some people learn, and some people like to be a little bit messy. And I would definitely not be able to live long-term messy.
It drives me crazy.
It is. I feel that way with, I've dated people who are more confrontational than me, because I'm very non-confrontational, thinking that that would be good for me. And it ends up driving me insane, because most very confrontational people get mad about nothing. Someone cuts them off. Their whole day's ruined. I'm like, what? Who cares?
Oh my God, yeah.
Who cares? I think some confrontation's important. It moves people forward. Some I'm like, can we be happy?
Yeah.
This doesn't matter.
There's so many directions that this conversation can go. But okay, so using the example that you just cited with like traffic, for instance, I'm very, very aggressive on the road in terms of my movement, but I try to keep a cool temperament as much as possible.
Your reactions.
Yeah, like if someone does something dumb, I might get upset, but I'm not gonna get enraged. I might complain, but I'm not gonna get enraged. And I've seen people get enraged. I'm an aggressive driver, so I've pissed people off, and I see how mad they get. And I'm like, that person's really emotional. Someone tried to run me off the road on a freeway on-ramp just the other day, going to the Batman. During that whole sequence with the Penguin, because the car thing it gave me a flashback of heading to the Batman screening. I couldn't even be inside that scene visually, like mentally, because I was thinking about when I almost got run off the road earlier, because this person didn't like I was trying to get on the freeway in front of them. We're all trying to get somewhere. I'm gonna get out of your way, okay? I drive a manual transmission. I drive a fast car. I'll get out of your way. And this person was so mad, have a fender bender with me in getting onto the freeway. And I'm like, all right, go ahead.
That's crazy.
The thing about it is, I know I fucked up. Go ahead. And I've pissed people off. I'm like, go ahead, man.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because not a big deal.
Yeah, or I'll smile.
Yeah. Yeah, or I'll throw out the peace sign. I'm like, sorry.
Yeah.
That was my bad.
Oh, the other day at Best Buy, I was just feeling impatient. And I was trying to get around these people to make a right turn. And this person got really mad. And I ended up stopping or something next to him. And he's like, roll down your window. He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, sorry, dude, I was just feeling impatient. And he didn't know what to do with that, because he was ready to have like a fight. And I just owned up to it. He's like, well, slow down. You know, he didn't know what to do with that.
You're just honest.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I'm very impatient. I just own it. The agreeable versus disagreeable thing, as someone who's experienced that, like it can be rough when you are someone on the opposite side. And that he explained it in a heartbeat. He's like, you know, one person's like, why are you so messy? Why do you care so much? Like, that's the fight. That's always the fight. Like, why can't you just let me have this? I'm like, because it looks awful. That's why. Like, it looks awful. This is my disc. I have to look at it though. It's awful. You know?
Some things you need to fight about.
Yeah, I really like this, and you guys should follow Jordan Peterson. He's got, you know, his YouTube stuff. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he's got a Patreon. You can help support him. And that's it for now. Thanks so much for hanging out. I'm Jaby Koay. This is
STEPH SABRAW.
Peace out.